Yeah, well, we have 2 weeks designated for those, the 27th and the 4th. And your job is to do a project where you work with an organization and do some kind of a presentation around a communication problem they're experiencing. You get written feedback from them, and then you come here and you do the project, you do the presentation for us, and then we talk about the feedback you got. So that's...
So there's nothing really written to hand in other than...
Just the presentation, yeah, just the PowerPoint presentation. No, I'm trying to run light on it. I mean, we're giving you a lot of reading this semester. A lot of this is very hard reading, so I'm running light on that part of it. Yeah. And then the paper is about some theory or theorist that you're particularly interested in. And that will likely become part of your comms at some point. Because you will ask, in all likelihood, you'll ask me to write a theory question for your comms. And I'll look back to the paper that you wrote as the focus of what you are doing. So
is the final paper going to be almost like a lit review on that person? Maybe that's something that trace how their study in that one topic has evolved? Yeah,
it could be that.
Okay.
Or it could be a particular theory of that author.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Just as long as it stays in the theoretical realm.
Of one author or?
One researcher. Or if you're particularly interested in attitude change, your paper could be about the different theories that there are relating to attitude change. You know, it could be around a theoretical problem. Something useful. Do something useful, you know, for your project. You know, you got to have a project while you're here, or else you're just doing stuff. And you got to have something you're working on. I'm just going to hit this quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, and we could. But Charles Berger's uncertainty reduction theory is one of the first theories that emerged from the communication field to compete with theories in other fields. So Charles Berger, you read an article by Craig, includes his article in the book about when people meet interpersonally, what goes on. Right, that's the practical question. When people meet, what's going on in the communication when they talk to each other? Now, you know, you might posit a number of dynamics. You might say, well, people are curious about each other. That's what drives it. People want to discover others, or they are interested in learning or expanding their horizons, or you know, I mean, you could think of any number of things, right? That you could say, what goes on when people meet each other? Chuck Berger says, when you cut to the root of all those things, what's going on is that people want to reduce uncertainty. The people have anxiety, they want to relieve the anxiety, and so they want to reduce the uncertainty that they're facing. So that what you see going on is explained by that. Now, there are criticisms of uncertainty reduction theory that say it's a white middle class cultural theory. That is not true in other cultures and with other people, although it's being used in other cultural research now. But, you know, I mean, again, a phenomenologist would be likely to say, when two people meet, what there is the unknown calling to the unknown, you know, and they want to communicate across that horizon to expand their horizons. So just so you're aware that every theory is, you know, positing a different mechanism, a root mechanism that explains what's going on. And Berger said what's going on is to reduce uncertainty about each other, and he has variables, you know, of nonverbal warmth, verbal output, self-disclosure, similarity, uncertainty. And he's very clear about what I want to do. I want to predict and explain. I'm making a theory to predict and explain. So I will make some axioms, which are the assumptions that we make and that we test. And so he's got his 8 axioms. You don't have to write all these down. You can get these anywhere. You know, Wikipedia, anybody, Chuck Berger. But he's got these axioms. And all of these are variables that can be measured. You know, verbal communication is the amount, very socio-psychological. Let's measure the amount of it. You know, the amount of verbal communication between strangers increases, the level of uncertainty decreases. We call that a negative correlation, right? Positive correlation means they both move up in the same direction. Negative correlation means as one moves up, the other one moves down. So in academic language, we're positing a negative correlation between these two variables. And nonverbal warmth is nonverbal. Affiliative expressiveness increases. So again, part of what socio-psychological likes to do is name things. You know, affiliative expressiveness. What is affiliative expressiveness? You know, it's expressions of wanting to be together. Yeah. So why don't you say that? You know, no, it sounds better to say this. Similarity, liking. There's a word for the liking between people who are similar. Do you know what the word is that socio-psychologists and organizational culture people use to describe that people like people who are like them? If that is the case, then these people are homophilic. There's a homophily.
That's disgusting. What kind of class is this?
They're homophilic. What in the world does that mean? That means that people usually like other people who are kind of like them. But we put it in one word, meaning same, liking, and there's a little Greek stuff here going on, and that's what we get. So socio-psychologists like to create words that describe things that we already know, but then we forget what it means because they give us these words to do this. Shared networks. So then these are the axioms, and just like Euclid, you know, you go from your axioms to your theorems, and you go on from there. Okay? So I'm not going to go into these. There are places, though, where he gets counterintuitive theorems out of this. And the one is that, how does this one go? As you get to know someone better, you want to know less about them. That's one of his theorems. You know, and people have been like, what? You know, but according to his axioms, that would be true. If you put these axioms together, you know, as people get to know each other better, they want to know less about each other. And people are like, well, that's kind of weird, but it's predicted by the model.
Since he has all framed all his theorems in that initial stage of the relationship, maybe he just, I'm thinking, maybe he just needs to say that you want to know less of that person as a motivation to reduce uncertainty.
Right.
Maybe there's different motivations to it, but...
Right, but it feels odd to people to say that,
yes.
though. Right. And yeah, so according to his theory, yes, it's true. As the uncertainty is reduced, you have less information-seeking behavior going on.
Maybe
So,
you're going to have different motivations.
well, he doesn't include that, right?
An interpersonal thing, I feel stupid because I can't remember it all, but it's like 4 things that all relationships are always like in a continuum of like openness and closed, like predictability and like no.
That sounds like relational dialectics from
yeah, so it's
Burgoon,
always, like, going back and forth.
Judy Burgoon.
So
Yeah.
maybe he's saying like that, like, because it's always going back and forth. The more you get, like, when you get to too much, you always want the other. Like the grass is always greener.
You know, Berger would say no. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Berger is like rigorous guy. You know, if you get a hold of the Griffin, I should bring that in. There's a Griffin CD with the book on communication theory that has interviews with all these people, and Berger's on it. You can see an interview with Berger. I'll try to get it. I didn't want to show him, but maybe it would be worth showing. But anyway, he's like, no, this is what I'm saying. You know, he's just like, in his world, he's got a theory and he stays within that theory. So he doesn't drift over into Judy Burgoon's relational dialectics. That's Judy Burgoon's relational dialectics. My theory is this.
I mean, could it also be associated with the just diminished returns? You know, that you know, at the beginning you found out all this great stuff about them, and then you find out that they leave their socks around. You know, but you know, and then like there seems to be a whole string of those kinds of things, and so
Right.
you kind of go, let's just stay with the. You know.
Yeah, well, there are other people who think what it is you've got to a point where you want to preserve the relationship, so you don't want to know
Right.
stuff that might threaten the relationship.
Right.
So, but Berger would say no, 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 no. It's about this. You know, he's sticking to his theory when he's doing this.
Now, why do they say that it's a white middle class theory? I'm curious why.
Well, this idea that the thing that's going on is anxiety and uncertainty about your relationship. Let me suggest a way to think about this. If you're in a culture that is a high communal culture versus a high individualist culture, when people meet each other for the first time, they're not necessarily trying to reduce uncertainty. They're trying to enact the community life that they share. So what motivates them is to restore community. Because here's someone I don't know, and I live in a world where everyone's got to be connected. So if I was a Japanese communication theorist or something, you know, or a culture that's a high collective culture, I might create a theory that says when people first meet, their goal of communication is to restore community.
But even to do that, you have to reduce uncertainty. Like, no matter what your goal is to do, like to work for something, if you don't understand each other or you're confused about it, you're not going to be able to.
But again, which the social psychologist says, which are the primary and which are the secondary dynamics? Which are the root ones and which are the ones that feed off that? And what we want are the root ones. So that's just
Has anyone really proven it to be, or come close?
the last thing I read said they were using this in intercultural, and it was somewhat effective.
Now, are they talking about culturals like across seas or cultural within the U.S.?
I don't know.
Okay.
That what I had read said they were using it for intercultural, and that it was effective in predicting communication behaviors.
I guess that they could be even more pertinent when talking to cross cultures, because the intercultural clashes are abundant in uncertainty.
Well, okay. Right.
So I guess it would make even more sense of reducing that uncertainty and finding more and more.
Right, and what makes a theory valuable is its explanatory and predictive power.
Yeah.
Right, so if it's working, then it's useful. I think Craig would say to us, it's useful within a certain range of things for certain purposes. And you need more theories than that.
You know, this makes me think about 100 Thanksgiving dinners that I've been at, and just the dynamics that go on when you're the new person at the Thanksgiving dinner, and there's this very powerful force at the table, like multi-generational, to restore community, right?
Right.
And you know, so stupidly will always say to the older person, once I sort of sort out how old they were, I'll be like, well, so what was the New Deal like? To tell me, did you ever see Babe Ruth play? And invariably, it throws everything off, and people will speak right in this particular family. Will speak over me. They'll say, pass the potatoes. Pass the potatoes. They'll block out any questions that could lead. They don't want it going anywhere at any point where there is uncertainty, because the more uncertainty there is, the less we can be sure of liking the people around us.
Yeah. See, these are variables he seeks to relate, right?
Would that be like a covering law then? Because how we talked about.
Ooh,
Would it
that's
be
a
a
tough
covering
question.
law that every time we communicate we want to reduce uncertainty?
Yeah, I think Berger would want to say that. He'd say this is human, non-cultural, true all times. I think Berger would want to say that. Yeah. Yeah. Nice thought, though. No one has asked me about a covering law in quite a while. So, all right, let me take you quickly to Simlog, and then we'll get time for the papers that we want to hear. Your book, Littlejohn mentions Robert Bales from Harvard, who did initial work on the study of interaction in groups. And he developed something called interaction analysis, or interaction process analysis. That was a way of categorizing the way people related to each other in a group. So again, this is something very socio-psychological. What are the variables going on? Who's doing what amount of what? Liking, affinity seeking, task function, all these things. Bales had graduate students who worked with him at Harvard, and for one reason or another, they decided to leave the academic world and take their theory on the road and become organizational consultants with it. And so Bales and his two students moved out to San Diego and began to run their own business doing organizational analysis, conflict resolution, productivity improvement in organizations, using Bales developing his theory even further. And so Simlog is an interesting example of a academic theory that's kind of like Barnett Pierce, that kind of moved beyond the academic world into consulting with Barnett Pierce's public dialogue project, or public dialogue consortium, where he now consults throughout the country and the world in places of crisis in communities. And then Bales did it in the organizational world. So he developed this tool to use. It was about questions of images or perceptions that people hold that affect their ability to function in teams. So his argument was that as people interact in a group, they form images of each other that then affect the way in which they relate as a team. Moreover, he said, there's not only an individual image, but there is a group image, that if you average together the images that people have, it will create a field that will then, like the assimilation effect of the latitude of acceptance and rejection, that as people will gravitate towards the group view. And we can measure this. We can make recommendations for change in people's behaviors to change their perceptions, and we can then measure that again at a later time. And we have a theory that says if people have these perceptions and if the average is in this area, the group will function at its best effectiveness. So it's a socio-psychological theory of measuring variables about interaction and predicting improvement in group function. So so you watch how people. So what you end up with is a three-dimensional model. Now, because it's represented in 2 dimensions, we represent the third dimension by the size of the circles. Okay, So what happens here is you ask people, you have an instrument for measuring their image of this person as a leader and as a teamwork person. 26 questions. You answer the questions, you calculate it all out, and then you plot the people on this graph. This graph has 3 axes to it. Again, this is a model, a theoretical model. On the one axis is the friendly behavior versus unfriendly behavior. So this axis, how you know that Saddam Hussein is less friendly than Bill Clinton, right? That's the way that goes. And on this scale, you have accepting task orientation of it, so that you cooperate with what's going on, or opposing task orientation of established authority. So you're a rebel, you're difficult, you don't cooperate, you don't do the stuff. And so Monica Lewinsky is less helping the task get done than Colin Powell is, you know, on this scale. And then the size of the scale, it's hard to tell in these ones, is the question of how much presence do you exert into the situation? How dominant are you, or how recessive are you? So are you a big presence in the room, or are you a little presence in the room? Do you participate a lot, or do you they don't even know you're there? So that's the size of these things. So Bill Clinton is a big player. You know, he dominates in the thing, whereas other people are smaller presences in this. So what happens in a SimLog study is that you use the tool, you generate the images, and then you make predictions on the basis of people's positions on these. And for instance, in this regard, this is the ideal space for a leader on these 3 dimensions. If a leader tests an image, then people will work well with that leader and they will work well with each other. If someone is down over here, they're viewed as that they're difficult, they're the opposition, they're the polarized opponent of the established authority. If they're over here, they're like a rigid bureaucratic, this is what the book says, we have to do it this way kind of a person. And over here, they're a friendly, let's go have a party, we can do the work later, who cares if we get anything done person. And so you have all of these positions that people can inhabit. You test a group on this and you plot them, and then you can make predictions about what's going on in the group. And this is very effective. I mean, I've done this with groups. And so I will never have seen a group interact. I'll give this to the group of people. They'll fill this out. They'll do this. I'll plot it and I'll say, okay, let me tell you what goes on in your group. You get together and this person immediately says, what are the what's on the agenda and what are we going to do today? You know, and then this person says, why do we have to do, let's take some time first and let's, you know, talk about what happened this week. This person says, we never get anything done anyway, who cares? You know, and they're like, whoa, yeah, that's what happens in this group. And this is a highly predictive tool. Now part of the what they did for this, I'm going to, so it's the system for the multiple level observation of groups is a theoretical model and a method of measurement for the improvement of leadership, teamwork, and organizational effectiveness. So what they did was when Bales, because Bales, this is one of the few consultants tools that has academic credentials. It has validity testing, reliability testing, it has extensive research base behind it. So what they did was they went all over the world and they asked people questions about what makes a good leader. Tell us who are a good leader, what do they do? And they generated like 800, 900 things. And so what they did then was they started to do factor analysis. What are the root ones that feed into the other ones? And they factor analysis, till they ended up with 3 dimensions. That they said these 3 dimensions are predictive of all of those 900 things. Because they're all these are at the root of all those things. Friendliness, unfriendliness, cooperativeness, difficulty, presence, or recessiveness. And these will predict people's behaviors in a group and the way the group functions together.
How do you get so many? Do you like do a different survey for each person?
How do you get so many
Like
things?
Yeah, like how you would know what their presence is, how big their circle would be. And
Well, again, you have to operationalize that question. So you say, this person talks more than most people, or this person talks less than most people.
so then, like,
This
if you
person
had
contributes,
5
this
people,
person doesn't contribute. What's that?
So if you had like 5 people, you would need to ask questions, like the same question separately for each of them.
Yes, so I did this with a group of 12 people. And 12 people had to each fill it out on themselves and the other 11. So I had 144 sheets of 26 questions. That's a lot of data points to process. Now, Simlog will make it easy for you. They've got it worked up where you give them a computer sheet, they color code them in, you pack them all up, you ship them off to San Diego, they run them through their computer and they print out beautiful color pictures of all of the things for you. Costs money. So when you hand code them though, but you can think about what it takes to hand code, how many would that, 144 times 26? That's a lot. It's about 4,000 data points. You had to calculate and plot. So I only did that once. Then I did smaller parts of the group. Yeah. But anyway, it's a highly predictive thing. But they did factor analysis to cut down to the core issues. So here's the question. What kind of values is the most effective leader of a task-oriented group you have shown behavior? And so on this chart, they would answer questions about rarely, sometimes, or often. So there were 3 levels for each of the 26 questions. And these all relate to the variables being measured. Friendliness, not friendly, which quadrant does the question ask about? And then you average all that up together. Person gets a score. And so you create a profile for the person. So this might be my image of myself, this might be my image of you, or this might be my image of the group. And then they've calculated that if the value of this thing is within these ranges, you are likely to be an effective leader. But if you come out below or above, then there's a point of remediation that we can recommend to you to change the way you relate in your group. That you be a little less friendly, you be a little more task focused. And we'll measure that again in 3 months and see if the group has perceived any change in your behavior. So when I went and did this training, I was with a group of people from Cracker Barrel, the Cracker Barrel organization. They use this to determine promotions for all of their management. So they send their human resources staff for this training, and they do this for all their, and if their managed trainees or people who are going to get promoted come outside of these lines, they don't promote them, or they give them a remediation program for 3 months or 6 months, and when they test them again, if their team doesn't rate them within these realms, then they're not going to be promoted, along with other things. But this becomes a part of the assessment package for them in management. So let me see if I can get most effective profile. They're just going to show you how they move it over, and it all ends up there. So all of these things translate to a visual image that you can use. And if you're in this circle, or in this circle, if your whole team tests up in here, you're like running on all cylinders and you're moving along. If you end up with, a couple people here, one over here, one over here, we can predict that a lot of your time in your group is spent fighting over procedures and then having morale issues with this person who thinks our group's a waste and we don't get it. We're doing the wrong thing and I don't know why we even bother. This company stinks. And so you can see it. So it's different from me interviewing you and saying,